Welcome to Fright Flicks. My name is Nate, and I am here to discuss with you the greatest horror western of all time, which may sound like a very bold statement, but really, it isn't that bold at all. The movie I'm talking about is called Bone Tomahawk. Brand new release, just hit video on demand a couple of weeks ago. And as of this recording, that's the only place it's available. Which is pretty much means every place, because whatever game platform you use or computer or phone you have, you can download this movie. And I personally recommend that you do. I think it was great. With a couple of huge, gigantic caveats. But back to my original topic. Best horror western of all time. Do you disagree? How could you possibly disagree? Let me give you a little test. Name 5 horror westerns. 1, 2, 3, go. What did you think of 1, 2? Did you think of 3? Did you actually think of 5? Honestly? Honestly. Did you think of 5 horror westerns? Now, if you did, how many of those were actually good? Near Dark? Sorry, I don't think Near Dark counts. It's got some of the stylistic western flair from director Catherine Bigelow. I don't really see it as a western, though. Ravenous doesn't count either, because that doesn't count as a horror movie or a western or as anything. There's no sort of box you can put Ravenous in that fits, other than it is a great movie. So, what did you think of Gallow Walkers with Wesley Snipes, Grim Prairie Tales maybe, The Quick and the Undead, Jesse James meets Frankenstein's daughter, that sort of thing? So now maybe you get my point a little bit. There's not a lot to choose from. This is a really narrow subgenre, not very well populated. And Bone Tomahawk, of all the ones that I've seen, is the one that best captures the spirit of the Western and the spirit of a horror movie. And believe you me, these are two radically different spirits. So while I personally give this movie a high score, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Great film. I will caution you, though, in my short form review, if you hate westerns, you won't like this movie. If you hate horror movies, you won't like this movie. You kinda have to like both genres in order for Bone Tomahawk to really work. I do like both genres, and it really worked for me. This is a quick and tidy review, in case you're in a hurry and just wanted a quick rundown on whether or not this movie is worth your time. I think I've given you enough evidence to move forward without spoiling anything about it. However, if you have a little bit more time, I'm about to get into the long form review. So, no duh, there aren't a lot of horror westerns. They're two niche markets. You don't hear a lot of people say, oh, I don't like comedies, or I don't like dramas. Maybe there are some people that say, oh, I don't like action movies. Some people don't like sci-fi, but in general, these are all pretty beloved genres. You will find people, however, that say, I don't like horror movies. You will find a lot more people that will say, I don't like westerns. And it is what it is. This isn't good or bad. A pet peeve of mine is people that say, oh, why don't they make more westerns like they used to? Because it's the obvious reason. A lot of people don't like westerns. Westerns don't make money. There's a small market for westerns, and there's always going to be some western movies, but a lot of people just don't like westerns. If you are one of those people, don't even try with Bone Tomahawk. It commits to the western 100%, which for me is what made it so unique. As is befitting a western, we've got a pretty simple setup, a clothesline of a plot, and it's really all about the characters on their quest. We've got a tribe of bestial troglodyte Indians. This is a tribe that is feared by other tribes. When consulted for some advice, a local native tells the sheriff, well, to you, they're going to look like any other Indian. But to us, we see them as monsters. They do things that no human would ever do. So anyway, this tribe makes a raid on the town, kills a couple of people, and abducts a couple of people, including the town doctor, a comely young lass. A sheriff, the sheriff, Kurt Russell, and his deputy, Richard Jenkins, the wife's husband, Patrick Wilson, and a local armed gentleman with a bad guy mustache, played by Matthew Fox, constitute the posse that is riding out in pursuit of these fearsome troglodyte Indians to reclaim the kidnapped people. That's it. That's pretty much the story from top to bottom, which is okay. Like I said, a Western is about the quest. You have four really good, different characters, these four personalities on this quest, and a lot of the movie, and it's a long movie. It is 2 hours, and it feels like a 2-hour movie. An action film or a traditional horror film would have a much more brisk pace. Bone Tomahawk doesn't rush things. It takes its time. It knows it's about the journey more than the destination. It sounds sort of glib, but it's also very accurate. Bone Tomahawk is the baby of If The Searchers and The Hills Have Eyes, Wes Craven version, had a baby together. It has all the earmarks of both films. And when it does get down to the nitty-grit, when we do actually run into the evil troglodytes and blood is spilled, some serious blood is spilled, and it gets... there's one scene in particular that I thought out Green Inferno, which I saw a few weeks ago. A scene of just torture and brutality and pain and suffering, which would make a lot of people look away. But for me, it really popped, even more than it would in the midst of a horror movie, because it was jumping off in the midst of a Western, and it made it seem all the more horrific. So that was a great use of violence for effect, instead of just violence for the sake of violence. The real strength of Bone Tomahawk, I thought, was the cast. The cast takes what could have been a decent movie, still arguably the best horror Western ever made, and really puts it up on another level. First of all, you've got Kurt Russell. There is no denying the screen presence, the charisma of Kurt Russell. He's always had it. Way back in the day as Snake Plissken in The Thing, I grew up loving Kurt Russell, and he's still got it. And, hey, super bonus, he can also act. So he's a great choice for Sheriff, who is a simple man, but a good man, and devoted to doing the right thing as sheriff. His deputy is Richard Jenkins. A lot of people are going to know him mostly from comedies, Step Brothers, a couple of Coen Brothers movies, Burn After Reading. He's also a great character actor, though. His role is sort of the bumbling deputy, you can picture him. He's got a scruffy beard, and he wears long johns, and he seems drunk all the time. He reins it in just enough from being a comedy character. He's still sort of the comic relief, but he's not a joke of a character, which is good. He's taken seriously as a person. The protagonist of the whole thing, the everyman who we're supposed to latch onto through his journey, is Patrick Wilson. I'm a big Patrick Wilson fan. He was in The Conjuring. He was in the Insidious movies. He was recently in a movie called Stretch. Even going back to Watchmen, you might not have liked Watchmen, but you got to admit Patrick Wilson was great as Night Owl. And regardless of what he's in, Patrick Wilson always brings his A game, and he does here too. He's hobbled, he's got a broken leg, but he's still got to take the journey because it's his wife. And this makes him a good underdog. It's not a flashy role, and at no point does he choose scenery. He is the everyman that we're supposed to get behind on this quest, and he does a very good job. The big surprise of the movie for me was Matthew Fox, who I mostly, to be fair, know through his work on Lost, which I didn't like his character on Lost, Jack Shepherd, so I just always assumed that I didn't like Matthew Fox. Boy, is he good in this movie. He's an unrepentant asshole. He is boastful about the number of non-whites that he's killed. He's trained his horse to not let anybody that isn't white ride the horse. But as much of a dick as he is, and he is a dick, he does have a code of honor, which he follows religiously. He's actually, when you get down to it, he's a dick. He's not evil. He does have a code that he follows. Fox nails this character, and the character never approaches being likable, but he doesn't have to, because the character believes in himself, and he's just very well realized, and a great counterpoint to the rest of the posse. So there you go. You have 4 very dynamic and intriguing characters on a quest together. So, you know what? The quest isn't super action-packed, but I didn't want it to be. I enjoyed the character interaction. And then action does jump off, and gore does jump off, and this is the part where it gets tricky to determine whether or not to recommend this movie, because, like I said, it follows the basic outline of a Western, which is slow and philosophical and about redemption and these sort of things. But it also throws in the shocks and the gore of a horror film, which is going to be off-putting to, like, fans of the traditional Western. And then, you know, the film is slow enough paced, that's going to be off-putting to fans of the traditional horror movie. Totally an odd duck, but had it broken off its path and gone one way or the other, it wouldn't have been nearly successful. This is entirely due to writer-director S. Craig Zahler. This was his vision, and I read that he actually directed the film because he had it in his head, and he knew it had to be done a certain way. Hats off to this guy. It was unique and special, and I completely enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite horror movies of the year, and if there were enough Westerns to put together a Best Western of the Year list, it would probably be on there too. So yeah, final analysis, 8 on a scale of 1 to 10, definitely gets an 8. Think it's solid all the way through. Really enjoyable, although definitely not for everyone. Am I wrong? Am I wrong about any of this? I would stake some actual money that I'm not, but can you think of a horror Western that is actually great that isn't Bone Tomahawk? I would love to hear your input, really. I think I have a pretty solid reference point for horror movies, but I haven't seen them all. Maybe there's one that got under my radar. So hit me up with some feedback on horror westerns or anything else. Respond to this video, or you can find me on social media at Nateflix with an X, or at Frightflix, that's FRIGHTFLICKS on Twitter and Facebook. I will be back very soon with more reviews, countdowns, top 5s, in-depth discussions and rants on horror movies, as well as our weekly rundowns of The Walking Dead and Scream Queens. Check out so much great material on the Frightflix channel here on YouTube.